Welcome into another edition of the Florida Man and Friends podcast, the Rivals Basketball podcast. I don't know why it has two names. I'm Rob Cassidy, joined by Dan McDonald, a.k.a. Dan the podcast man. What's up, Dan? How are you, man? How are things in Atlanta?
Good, man. The Bills are coming off a big win last night, so I'm good. I'm feeling pretty good today.
I'll tell you what. God bless the Buffalo Bills, my friend. I have been habitually losing money on the Kansas City Chiefs because they're 11-1 team that cannot cover. They just do not.
They don't subscribe to good teams win, great teams cover. They don't subscribe to that.
Well, I don't think they're a great team this year, but we can get into that later. Anyway, so I found myself chasing on the night game last night on the Bills, and despite my irresponsible efforts, it paid off, leveled me back. So, cheers to your Bills. I appreciate it. What else is new, man? Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah. Watching some more ball and living life.
I'm looking forward to Creighton tonight against Marquette. I think that'll be fun. That's a 7-point spread. So when this comes out, this game will be over. So my advice is to take Creighton. And when they lose by 20 tonight, this will look hilarious.
Creighton looks probably – I mean, I've watched all the top teams play now. I think they're a top 5 team. I don't know. I think they're ranked like 8th right now. I think they're a top 5 team.
They look great. I think they should be able to cover 7. Marquette's a good team, but like you said, Creighton looks incredible.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I know Villanova was picked to win the Big East this year. If I'm basing it off what I've seen at this point, there's no doubt in my mind Creighton's the best team in the Big East.
Did you watch the Kansas game?
Yeah, I saw bits and pieces of it, but not a ton of it. But, I mean, I think that's a great win. You can go win at Kansas. I don't care if the crowd's there or not.
They've got depth on that team that I didn't know they had. I mean, you always know the bullet points for Creighton, and, you watched a little bit at the beginning of the year. But I think that Kansas game showed off a little bit of depth. And I do like the -7. I think they can win that game by double digits. And this is going to sound so funny when they get blown out, and this comes out tomorrow morning, and we're talking about this now.
You might need to delete the beginning of this little podcast.
All right, man. Well, let's get right to it. Let's talk about some basketball. Let's talk about the ACC. Let's move over there. It's wide open. We can get into that later. I want to start with kind of Coach K and what everybody's been kind of talking about. He comes out saying he doesn't think they should be playing basketball in a pandemic, which whether you believe or don't believe, I think it's fair to question his motivation for saying it. I mean, even if I agree with him, and at times I do, I don't know that was motivated. I think I might kind of agree with Alabama's head coach here, where would he have said that? Would they have skipped that Gardner-Webb game if they were looking like a juggernaut? Where do you kind of come down on the motivation there and kind of this little beef that started?
Yeah, so I'm mostly with you. I'm 100% with you in this. Like, maybe Nate Oates shouldn't have come out and said it the way he said it and as aggressively as he said it. But I think on a lot of levels, a lot of people probably agree with what he said. My thing would be whether you think we should be playing and whether you don't think we should be playing. I happen to think we should be playing, but that's besides the point. Coach K could have come out after they beat Bellarmine and said that. He could have come out he can get ESPN mics in front of him whenever he wants to come out and say something like that. Why do you wait until you get killed by Illinois right after getting beat down by, I think it was Michigan State, right? They lost to Michigan State. Why do you wait until after a bad loss to make that comment? Like, you've been coaching for 40-something years, man. Like, have a little self-awareness to know that that's not going to play well.
Also, he has to know that because of who he is and kind of the history, people can't wait to pounce on him. Let's agree with if it would have been –
if he comes out after they beat Bellarmine, and I know it's Bellarmine, like, I don't care. If he comes out after a win and says that, I think people are like, okay, Coach K has got a fair point here. But when you come out after a loss, I just think it's a really bad look for somebody that should be smarter than that.
Yeah, and I kind of like what Oates did. Like, even if depending on it doesn't matter.
I'm all for Coach Beef. So anytime we get a little bit of that, I'm for it.
Yeah, sure. We can't sit here and complain about how this sport is ignored so much as it is and doesn't get the run. And then when something interesting happens, be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. We need college basketball to be more and more like pro wrestling. As I sit here in a WrestleMania shirt.
You get a little bit of it. I mean, you and I both know, like, you get a little bit of that in the SEC in football. Like, Lane Kiffin will call somebody out or, whatever it is. But, yeah, I think we need more of that in hoops. I think these guys are too good of friends. We need to, start some drama here.
100%. Let's continue down this road, Dan. If it did get beefy in college basketball, let's say we entered all these coaches into like some kind of Royal Rumble setting or brawl, who you got? I like Frank Martin and Andy Kennedy. Somebody from the Bob Huggins, maybe Bob Huggins is as a sleeper.
Yeah, those are the mean guys. Trying to think who's physically imposing that you see. I mean, obviously Patrick Ewing,
Yeah.
You don't want to mess with him.
He might be a little, the knees on him though. You can go low on Pat.
He's getting a little bit up there. Trying to think who's sneaky tough.
That's why I said Huggins. Bob, say what you want about his physical attributes, but that's a dude that's been in a bar fight, right? Like, there's no way that 21-year-old Bob Huggins had been around the block or two in a fight over a darts game or something.
No, but yeah, Frank Martin is probably the correct call because, like, he just looks at you and then he'll yell at you, and you're just like, that's what this guy
has been screamed at by Frank Martin on national television. I can tell you it's not a great experience. Also, Frank worked as a door guy down here in Miami for a while, so he's also probably got experience in bar fights.
That's the correct. I mean, I know he's getting a little older now, but he's still the correct answer here.
He's joined the ball club too. Speaking of, he's in the Dan.
Oh yeah, he's on the team. And I mean, like, over the last couple of years, we've lost some members of the ball team. Buzz Williams used to be on our team, and
Shaka?
now he has hair. Shaka. I mean, what are we doing here? Once you join the team, you don't leave.
Like, has Shaka always had the ability to grow hair? Did we get some?
I don't know. And he's just like throwing it in our faces. Like, we thought he was one of ours. That he's like, hey, I'm going to get out in front of this thing early. I'm just going to go ahead and shave my head. And all of a sudden, Corona hits and he decides to grow his hair out.
Well, I don't think it's any coincidence that Texas was kind of struggling under Bald Shaka. Now that he's joined the hair club, they look good. I mean, this looks like the best team. This looks like the best team he's had there.
It hasn't been. Most of my bald-headed brothers, we haven't had a great start so far this year. I know Louisville, like, I usually count on Chris Mack to kind of carry the torch for us, but I mean, not bad so far. But I think
they look okay.
There's more in the tank there. There's more in the tank. I think
that's a good transition actually to the next thing I want to talk about is the ACC and kind of what's going on there. That looks like anybody's league right now. I mean, we addressed Duke. They don't look like Duke of old. North Carolina looks better than they looked last year, but they look a little bit shaky. Then you have Louisville. I got somebody calling me here. Then you got Louisville. You've got Florida State. It could be interesting. Who do you like over there?
A little surprise at you. I think Clemson is going to be towards the top of that league. I've watched them a few times now, man. They got depth. They got inside guys. They got guards that can score it. I mean, they've got the goods. Them and Florida State are probably playing the two best, and then you come out and you see Syracuse the other day just do what they did to Boston College. I mean, it's like you said, it's a wide open league.
It is. I've watched Florida State a couple times. They're an interesting case because they look, and I don't want to say bipolar because it's not bipolar. There are flashes where they look incredible. Then there are streaks where they look less than that. And I think it's all going to come down to how far can Scotty Barnes take them, because he's kind of the same way. He's kind of a microcosm of the team where I watched him a little bit, and he makes some really incredible plays. He hit some really important shots. I can't remember who they were playing down the stretch. Who were they playing in that game I watched? Oh, man. No. It was whoever they played before that.
When he hit the game winner?
Yeah, he hit the game winner.
Yeah.
And he hits those game winners, and he hit more than that game winner. He had a great he plays great defense down the stretch. He did some good things, but also he threw some balls into the stands, made some really weird decisions with the basketball. Florida State is who I'm going to pick because he is so young, I think Barnes will level out, and so will the team, and they'll start playing more consistent basketball. And I know they're high on that team. And I think when he kind of comes of age midway through the season, in the middle of conference play, I think that team will too, and I think they should win the league. I think that's going to be my pick.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Like, if I was picking the number one team in the ACC right now, I think they're the right choice. And the thing I like about them is this is the kind of team that Leonard Hamilton just thrives on because he's got so much length on that team, man. Like, when you put the ball in Scotty Barnes' hand and he's your point guard, and you've got a 6'8", 6'9" point guard, that's going to be tough. And then MJ Walker, as a senior, has really come on. He's looking here right now. He's averaging 17.7. But Anthony Polite's been great. They got Raekwon Gray. They got all these guys that have been in the program for years now that they've developed the way they always do at Florida State. Like, I think their player development is as good as anybody's. And, yeah, I'm with you. I think they look like – they won the ACC last year. I think they look like they can do it again this year.
They're starting to protect the rim a little bit better. And, they don't get a lot of offense from those 7-footers they have, but they can rotate them in there, and it does make a difference. And you mentioned the length that they have on the perimeter. Defensively, I think they've got a lot. They're going to get a lot better there too. So I think this is a team that hasn't hit its stride yet. And when you think about it that way, I think that makes them the favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking right here. They got 5 guys right now averaging over 8 points a game, which is, I mean, that's pretty good balance right there. So I think they're right here today. They're the favorite. But like you said, Carolina, I think Carolina's got much better talent this year. I think they're going to need more consistent play from Caleb Love. And they need somebody to come on and start hitting shots from perimeter because they don't really have a true shot maker. RJ Davis has been pretty good so far shooting, but
Louisville is another interesting team. They've looked good when they've played. I don't think they've played since like the 1st of December or something like that. It's been a while. Yeah. So that's another thing that makes this season hard to kind of handicap. You know, it's also probably going to make it hard to bet, which is why I'll be bankrupt by March. So, you know.
I know, like, Georgia Tech was another one you wanted to talk about a little bit. Like, they're one. I mean, I know they started off the year with a couple bad losses to Mercer and Georgia State, and going up and beating Kentucky now doesn't look as great. But Georgia Tech's got some upperclassmen in the really good backcourt with Bubba Parham and Jose Alvarado and Mike DeVoe, who hasn't played great. Kyle Sturdivant, the transfers coming on. And I know the guy you wrote about, Moses Wright. I mean, he's been playing as good as anybody in the ACC so far. So –
that Kentucky win is still – I mean, anytime you beat a team with that much talent, regardless of how they're –
for sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. So, yeah, Georgia Tech's another one. I mean, could they get better and better as the year goes on? And we look back at those first 2 losses as just like a complete anomaly.
I think that's a thing – and I want to get to Moses Wright, but I think that's a thing worth talking about too, is just how erratic this season is, that I think we're going to look back on a lot of these storylines that we're talking about right now, what's wrong with Kentucky, what's wrong with Duke, and maybe not all of them. But just the way this is all set up is pretty conducive to radical swings in performance and small sample size looking like something that maybe it isn't. I think a lot of these teams that are bad right now are going to be very good by the end of the year, and maybe some of these teams that look pretty good right now. I think this is going to be the hardest to predict season that we've ever seen, probably.
I would agree. Like, but I think a lot of times, like, there's been maybe not to this extent, but we've seen years where Duke looks a little sluggish, and then they kind of figure it out a little bit. Kentucky is the one where you see it a lot. They can come out and look very, very pedestrian early in the year, and then Cal figures it out. The thing with Kentucky this year is the point guard situation. Like, whether it's Askew or Davion Mintz, or if they just decide, hey, let's just put the ball in Terrence Clark's hands and let him be the playmaker, like, whatever it is. But, like, that's a problem. Because I think that's why, like, I think going into the game the other day when Kentucky lost to – who did they lose to on Saturday? Notre Dame. Before that game, B.J. Boston shooting 16.6% from three-point range. And he's not been taking great shots. And he can't get no rhythm because I think he's a guy that he needs a point guard to kind of set the table for him a little bit. Like, he's not a go create his own shot guy. So I think if they can kind of figure out the point guard thing, everything else will fall in line. Because I think I've talked about him last week. Isaiah Jackson's my favorite player in the country. I love how hard that dude plays and competes. But, you know, there's only so much he can do playing inside. And their guard play needs to get a lot better quickly.
When I saw the efficiency numbers, and they get a lot better when Boston's not out there. And I'm not saying that they should bench him because he's young. He's obviously adjusting to the game, and the only way he's going to get better is to play him. And I think that's the way Cal's looking at it. But it is striking when you look at kind of the efficiency number. You're right. The ball in his hands is not – he's not the kind of guy you want making those decisions. He's got to be playing off the ball more. They've got to figure out what to do with point guard. You're breaking
and like North Carolina too. Like they're very young this year. They added a bunch of new pieces. They got 2 freshman guards starting, and they got the young big guys. I know they're not starting, but you know, I think if they're going to be really good this year, they're going to need Walker Kessler and Day'Ron Sharp to be guys for him. So yeah, I mean, I think North Carolina will get better, but like for them to be a team that's going to be like a second weekend or potentially a Final Four team in the tournament, they're going to need somebody to come in and start hitting shots. And maybe it is Caleb Love and RJ Davis. Maybe that's the answer. They just get more comfortable as freshmen and they start hitting shots at a better rate. But Puff Johnson, somebody off the bench who I think could come in and hit shots for him. I don't think Leaky Black's that guy. I think he's kind of the Swiss Army knife guy. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how some of these young, talented teams kind of take shape as the year goes on.
Before we move on from the ACC, you did mention Moses Wright. I did write about him. I want to touch on him because it is such an interesting story. The kid is averaging 21 and 10 through 4 games, which, again, small sample size. 2 of those games were against schools that maybe are not on Georgia Tech's level, even though they lost. But one of those games was against Kentucky. He's taken another giant step forward, it looks like, from last year. And what makes him interesting to me is this is a kid that played 1 year of varsity basketball, kind of slipped through the cracks. There wasn't a ton written about him as a prospect. He was a swimmer. He was a tennis player. And then I think around his sophomore year, he started kind of trying to toy with basketball, but he really only played one full season of varsity hoops. So when I see a kid like this with decent size, he's 6'8", 6'9", to play in the front court, and he starts taking these giant leaps forward, and you know he hasn't played much basketball, you start to wonder what the ceiling is, because it could be pretty darn high, and I don't want to sit here and say the kid's going to play in the NBA or anything like that, but I don't think it's out of the question if this is the trajectory that this kid is going to be on. I kind of want to see where this goes.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. What is this ad? No, I'm with you. I think, and I remember him coming out of high school, kind of, he said, like, I don't think I ever heard his name until he visited Georgia Tech. I want to say it was April of his senior year. And I want to say this was like a live period weekend in April. I remember getting a text from somebody saying, hey, Moses Wright coming to Georgia Tech. So, like, kind of like you, like, nobody had written about him. Like, okay. So I kind of started asking around, and, like, yeah, he's kind of new to the game. He's got upside. You know, they need a guy. I mean, why not take a swing late? And I think a lot of Eric Reveneau, Georgia Tech assistant coach, has had a history of this, of taking guys like Ben Lammers before, and James Banks came a long way the last few years under him. Like, he's done a really good job with forwards and centers, just developing them. So I think he deserves a huge amount of credit here. But ever since they've been there, Georgia Tech staff has done a great job of developing players. So I think Moses Wright is just another example of that. But to your point, like, with his development the last 4 years, and the NBA loves those 6'8", 6'9", long athletic guys. I mean, and he's shooting threes now. So, I mean, it's not out of the question.
Doesn't he seem like the kind of guy that could maybe go undrafted, land on a G League team, and then you could see him pull like a Rodney Magruder or something, where he plays a couple years in Sioux Falls or whatever the heck kind of place there is. And the next thing you know,
random small-town G League team.
Because he is going to probably need another year to really – because I don't know how long it's going to take him to reach that ceiling. But I know he hasn't hit it yet, or it doesn't seem to be. I mean, if he keeps getting better. So maybe he is the case for a G League team.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of those kind of guys, like, you just got to find the right fit. You got to find an NBA team that really cares about developing guys and sees something with him and commits to developing him. But, no, I mean, I think there's still more left in the tank, because he's made a big jump again from last year to this year. So, yeah, he's intriguing.
Speaking of guys with high ceilings, you got a chance to see Bruce Thornton again, the point guard that we both love, tough kid, 5-star, in the Milton Norcross game. Let's talk about the guys you saw there, as far as, you know, these are the next names coming up. I mean, maybe a lot of the listeners aren't familiar with them, but we can make them familiar. Well, who'd you kind of see out there? What'd you kind of like?
Yeah, so I was there for the last game. It was an event that was scheduled a while back that they had some changes throughout the day. So, you know, the games ended up not being quite as good as I'd hoped. But so I got over there for the last game, Norcross and Milton. So Milton ended up winning, I think it was 68-43. So they won by 25. It was never really that competitive after the first quarter. But Bruce Thornton, I'm pretty sure, had the quietest triple-double I've ever seen. I think it was 12 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. But just did what he always does. Like, there's games where I've seen Bruce where he's gone for 30-plus because he's had to do it. But he's also the kind of guy that's more than capable of just kind of taking a little bit of a back seat, letting his teammates thrive. And that's more what he did on Saturday night. But, again, never resulted in a triple-double and a 25-point win. But Kanan Carlisle was the one for Milton that really kind of jumped out. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit already. We're going to do our 2023 rankings next month. And, I mean, he's a guy – I think he's a top 25 kid in that class. He's just such a aggressive, athletic, natural scorer, about 6'2", and already has some high major offers. He was really impressive.
He's really got that confidence. You know, I saw him with you when we were together at the Fall League this year up there at Lake Point, and I loved him too. I know I talked to him. I think I wrote about him, but I can't really remember who was all really involved. And I know it's early. What schools are kind of involved there? Do you know off the top of your head?
I believe Auburn was the first one to offer him, and they've probably been the most aggressive. Auburn does a really good job in Georgia, and I know they've gotten a lot of guys, but what they do is they can get on guys like Sharif Cooper, who I know is not playing, but Isaac Okoro and guys Jabari Smith. Like, they do a really good job of getting in on those guys early. And then I think a lot of schools get kind of caught up in recruiting the upperclassmen, and they don't put as much time in underclassmen, whereas Auburn will lock in on the kid early, and they will be relentless. And I think that's where, you know, how they end up getting a guy like potentially Scoot Henderson this upcoming year or whatever. It's like they just do such a good job of getting like on a kid like Kanan. I think they offered him, I want to say it was before his freshman year at the high school team camps in Georgia. And they've stayed on him. So Auburn's in there. want to say Florida and Clemson and a few others. So his list, he'll be a guy that, he's got grades, so he'll be a guy that'll have 25 plus offers. But the other guy I want to talk about from Milton too is, and I read about him a little bit back in the summer, is Kendall Campbell. We have in the top 100 in 2022. He's just such a hard playing, aggressive rebounder. And every time you see him, he gets getting a little more comfortable kind of finding his role as a four-man, as a rebounder, guy that can do a little posting up, but can also kind of put the ball on the floor and hit some shots a little bit. So I think he's a guy. I mean, I think after our tournament at Lake Point back in August, he ended up getting offers from like Alabama, Georgia Tech, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, I want to say, offered him. So he's going to have a bunch of those ACC, SEC kind of offers too. But he was really impressive for Milton.
Let's go back to the Auburn thing because I want to touch on that and I find it interesting. You know, you touched on them getting in on guys early. They land Jabari. Does that, and I think it should, you know, they've always been good in Atlanta, but when you get a guy of that caliber on your roster from there that other kids know, other kids gravitate to, other kids are familiar with, other kids have played against, and kind of know the caliber of talent that he is, does that help them with a kid like Kanan? You got to think yes, right?
So I think it does, but not necessarily in the way you think. Like it does is in the fact that it makes like Auburn like a legit destination for high level guys. Because like obviously Kanan knows like, hey, if I go to Auburn, I'm probably not going to play with Jabari because he's probably going to be there for his year and then he's out.
But it legitimizes the name.
But now like they've had a stretch where they've had Chumo Kiki, lottery pick, Isaac Okoro, lottery pick, Jabari Smith, probably going to be a lottery pick. They've had Jared Harper come up. They've had Bryce Brown come through. They have Jalen Williams there who's coming on a little now. Like they've had so many Georgia kids that, and the thing that Auburn does that's smart too, and I kind of always tell people this, like recruiting in Georgia is kind of complicated for like Georgia and Georgia Tech because of being in-state schools, like you're kind of obligated to, or you feel obligated to recruit everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just you can't pick a kid from one AAU team and then not recruit a kid from the other AAU team. You've got to recruit them all. And it's just hard, whereas these schools that are in bordering states, Florida State, Auburn, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Clemson, South Carolina, even the North Carolina schools, they can come in and just, hey, I want to recruit this guy and that guy. And they focus on those guys, and that's it. And that's what Auburn does a really good job of. They're not going to come into Georgia and recruit Bruce Thornton, Scoot Henderson, Dylan Hunter, Chase Cormier. No, like they're going to come in and they're going to isolate on Scoot Henderson, and that's who they're going after. And more times than not, they get their guy like Jabari.
I think
that's what they do really well.
And maybe we should expand on it even more because I think the average fan doesn't really understand that point you just made. If you are an in-state school, there are a lot of people that you do not want to rub the wrong way, and you have to recruit kids for almost show. You know, it's almost like a performative recruiting where you might not want the kid, but because of your standing as an in-state school, you've got to keep certain coaches happy. You've got to keep certain people happy. And so you do have to waste some time maybe recruiting kids that you don't want. That's a real thing.
Yeah, and I saw the same thing. Like I used to live in Texas, and like you see it in Dallas. You see like there's like a Dallas-Houston rivalry kind of thing where they kind of they get along, but there's also that underlying tension there where like if you're Texas A&M and you start recruiting too much in Houston and not taking enough Dallas kids, or vice versa, like there's like a awkward tension there.
Cross sport too, you know. I mean,
yeah, and that's why like sometimes it's easier for like Oklahoma and Oklahoma State to come out down in Texas and be like, they can kind of start up like, hey man, how come Texas isn't recruiting you?
Exactly.
And like, exactly. And you can just stir it up. And I've seen schools do that here in Georgia and have a ton of success with it. And it's a fascinating conversation to have, I think. Like, and I kind of like digging into the deeper details of that kind of.
No, I do too. And this is how, and I hope basketball never gets to this point, but this is how we've gotten to the point in football recruiting where everybody's got 30 fake offers because everybody has to make fake offers to keep people happy. You know, like every kid has a Miami offer in Florida, but none of them. And I really hope basketball doesn't get that way, but it seems like we might be trending slowly in that direction.
And the thing I'm surprised in basketball that hasn't picked up this good thing in football, where football, most times a commitment, it's just you're labeling that school as the leader that everybody got to take shots at. Whereas in basketball, if a kid commits, it's over 99% of the time. And there's some times where you hear some schools doing stuff behind the scenes, whatever. But 99% of the times, you know, Jabari Smith, who we were just talking about, he commits,
he's going.
All the other schools back off. So that would, like, in football, you can't, like, as a recruiting analyst, a kid commits, like, it's not over as far as covering them until they sign.
That's the other thing. It's fake. Like, a commitment in football means nothing.
Yeah, it's like,
you might as well not
for
cover.
example, like when Bruce Thornton committed a couple weeks ago,
It's over.
like unless I start hearing stuff that like, hey, Bruce is about to decommit, I don't have to worry about covering Bruce's deal at all anymore.
Yep.
And that's a good thing about, but like same time, like it kind of makes it a little bit harder to drum up interest towards signing day
Sure.
on our end because kids have all committed and there's not a ton of drama. Like, I think the kid, you can remember his name, Alex Collins, he's from Miami.
Yeah.
Didn't his mom steal his letter of intent or something?
Yeah, ran out the door with it before he could sign it.
Yeah, and there's stuff like I think Josh Harvey Clemens, who signed with Georgia, somebody ran off of his letter of intent because they wanted to sign with Florida State, I think it was. But
I would rather have the boring stuff than have to write a story about a kid committing when you know the kid's not going there. It just seems so performative and crappy to be like, so-and-so committed to Oregon State from Miami. He's never visited Oregon State. He's not going to Oregon. He's not going. He knows he's not going. I just never want it ever to get to that.
My favorite, so I dabbled in the football recruiting side of things with our UGA site with Roddy and Dash and those guys who did an unbelievable job. And my favorite recruiting story, I just got to tell these guys this a couple weeks ago. Chris Carson, running back for the Seahawks right now.
Mm-hmm.
Many may not remember, he was a junior college running back. I want to say he was at somewhere in Kansas. Commits to Georgia summer before his JUCO sophomore year. Stays committed. This is before early signing periods. This is going into February. He takes a last weekend before signing day visit to Oklahoma State. Out of nowhere. I get in touch with him. It was either Sunday night or Monday night right before signing day. Get a story on him. And this is probably 10 or 11 o'clock. Don't even get a chance to write the story. By the time – and he tells me, no, there's just a visit to Oklahoma State. I'm sticking with Georgia. By the time I woke up the next morning, it's called around 8:30, kid had already flipped to Oklahoma State. Like, that's football recruiting in the nutshell.
Yeah, that can never happen.
Never until those letter of intents come through, and sometimes even that's not enough. It's not over. When you're in basketball, there's.
Let me put it this way, because I think like AAU coaches and stuff get an unnecessary bad rep a lot in basketball. But the reason this isn't happening in basketball is because those people are adults. It feels like the AAU circuit is way more structured and way more responsible and way more involved than the 7-on-7 circuit in football, where really anything goes. Nobody's really giving those kids much guidance. They're doing whatever the hell they want to do as far as recruiting goes, where I feel like these AAU teams are way more professionally run. They have, it's more organized. And I think that probably – yeah.
It's become that way in the last 10 years or so. Like once Nike stepped in, and this is an interesting conversation. Once Nike stepped in, this is right around when I started, about 10 years ago. I started doing it about 11 years ago. Mm-hmm. They started at EYBL, which made it the league and made it more corporate, where Nike's got their hands on everything, right? And then Adidas followed up with the Adidas Gauntlet, and Under Armour came in with the Under Armour Association. And once those three companies kind of came up with their own circuits, it's kind of helped to police, like, just more of the stuff. And like you just mentioned, like, people dog AAU coaches all the time. And
for no reason.
There's bad apples in AAU. There's no doubt about it.
There's bad apples in journalism.
There's bad apples in trainers. There's bad apples in our business. Like, whatever anybody out there listening does, there's bad people in your business. But what I've noticed is, and this is important to get out there, AAU coaches more times than not are not pushing a kid, hey, you're signing with school A or school
B. No, not
B.
at all. Yeah.
What they can more do, and I think a lot of college coaches agree on this, is you've got to keep AAU coaches at the point where they're not screwing you over and they're not telling their kid not to sign with your school. Because I think there's more influence to say, hey, don't go sign with school A, as opposed to, hey, go sign with school A for this reason. Because I think more kids have either parents or high school coaches or trainers, cousins, uncles, whoever, friends, that can kind of,
but yeah,
encourage them a certain way. But like, if you cut anybody who's important out of the process, good luck.
Yeah, and let me make another point about AAU coaches here that and you notice sometimes they will steer kids away from another school, but maybe sometimes that's necessary. Like, let's be honest,
yeah.
Colleges don't treat these kids very well, right? So if you wrong a kid, and I'm looking out for the kids in the future on my AAU team, I'm going to tell them not to go there too. I mean, I understand why they would do that in some cases.
Yeah, and I've seen that recently, and like, so kind of where we just got finished talking about the ACC. I'm pretty sure I heard Leonard Hamilton say this at one point. I can't remember if it was a private conversation or something he said publicly or whatever, but I know what Florida State's strategy is, and it's a smart thing to do in recruiting, is find out, and not that they don't like cut other people out, but like recruit the kid, find out who's the most influential person in that kid's life, and recruit them too.
Yeah.
Like, don't waste time with some coach that's got no juice. I mean, keep him involved, talk to him or whatever, but like you're putting your energy into recruiting the kid and recruiting whoever is that influential person in his life. It's a coach, it's a parent, it's a brother, it's whoever. And I think it's shown that Florida State's recruited pretty well.
Speaking of kids getting recruited, let's move on. We've got an impending announcement on December 19th, which I believe is Friday? Saturday. Kyle Cuffe from the Northeast, originally from New York, I think, is going to commit. He's down to Kansas State, St. John's. There are a few others in there, but I think it'll be one of those three. This is a larger conversation, too. Have you seen the kid live? I've seen tape. I've not seen him live. I think he looks pretty darn good. I don't know if you've seen him or not.
I had a chance to see him, unfortunately.
Okay. His dad went to St. John's. I know Kansas is very involved as well. I think Kansas is probably the leader, though. Who knows in recruiting what's going to happen there. If he doesn't pick St. John's, if he picks any other of these schools that are involved in it, he will be committing to a school without visiting, which is happening a lot in COVID-19. Would you be able to do that? I don't know if I'd be able to roll those dice. Like, I care about where I live too much to just commit to a place and then shrug and say, hope it's nice.
Yeah, I would say this. I think the harder thing for me than not visiting a school would be not meeting the coaches in person.
Sure. So,
if I was a 2021 prospect and I never got a chance to visit a school, but like during my junior year, like in this case, like say Bill Self, and I'm Kyle Cuffe, and Bill Self came to visit me and brought Norm Roberts and the rest of his staff. If I met those guys in person and felt good about them, I think that would be enough for me. And then the other thing too is I'd like to meet some of the guys on the team. Like that would probably, because those are the guys you're going to be living with, playing with, practicing with, all that. The campus thing, I mean, I would personally think like, okay, it's Kansas, it's going to be nice, or it's Arizona, it's going to be nice. Like, I wouldn't worry as much. And you can do your own research online. Like, there's enough out there. You could do virtual tours. Like, I would. My bigger thing was I would like to meet the coaches in person. If I've done that, I think that would probably be enough for me to.
See, that's what makes
in these circumstances. If that'd be enough for me to commit without visiting.
That's what makes Cuffe an interesting case. I do not know where he's going, but I'm going to assume it's either St. John's or Kansas. His dad went to St. John's. He's been to St. John's. It feels like he's comfortable with the vibe there because it is close to home. He's got the legacy. His dad played there. On the other hand, he seems to really love Bill Self in Kansas. And that's why I kind of think they're probably the leader. That's probably, if I had to make a bet, that's probably where I'd put my money. I'm not sure of it. But it should be interesting because you're really going up against tradition and a relationship via Zoom against family history and comfortability. I think really it's going to be interesting to see who wins out.
Yeah, no doubt. And I always I think it's another interesting conversation is kids who are legacies to certain schools and how that always plays out. Because sometimes like it's an advantage, but sometimes kids like, for example, I know we mentioned Bruce Thornton a little bit ago. Both of his parents were athletes at Georgia.
Yeah. And
Georgia was in his top 5, but he made an early commitment to Ohio State. And I'll be honest, like I don't think Georgia was 2 or 3 on this list. I don't think it was ever really that close for them. And it's just kind of interesting. Like but some guys, like it's a huge deal. Like I want to go where my parents went. So I always find that whole topic interesting of how it goes with legacies.
Like, especially if my dad was good at whatever I was doing and he went to some school, there's no way. I always say that if I was Bronny James, I wouldn't be playing basketball. Now, he's good at basketball. He's made a great choice. But because I'm a coward, if I was him, there's just no way. I would have taken up rowing.
It's like Michael Jordan's kids. Like, I mean, they played in college. I think one was a walk-on at Illinois and one played at Central Florida. But, I mean, like, you're never Jeffrey Jordan or Marcus Jordan. You were Michael Jordan's son.
Yeah,
like,
no matter what.
Like, it's just that's tough, man.
And the expectations and the heckling, and it takes a strong-minded kid. And, you know, by all accounts, Bronny is that. But, I mean, you really do have to be a mentally tough teenager to put yourself in.
I think it's one thing, too, like, if your dad was, like, a walk-on that never played at a school and then you're a 5-star recruit, like, that's probably a different deal. But, no, it always fascinates me because you see it on message boards where, oh, my God, so-and-so former player's got a kid coming up and, oh, we're going to get him because – why would he need to go anywhere else?
Sure. And then it never happens.
Yeah, like that sounds good and all, but you know, that kid's got a life he wants to live too, and maybe it's not lined up with what his parents did.
Yeah, I always wanted to get away from home. That would be the other thing I would have to chat. All right, I think we've done pretty well. We should probably mention Keontae Johnson and just that our thoughts are with him. I don't really know what the latest update is there. I just know that it's a horrific situation. Really, really, really hard to discuss, really hard to talk about. And just, wanted to note it and just say that my thoughts are with him and his family.
Like you, I didn't see it happen, but like not long after it happened, I got 3 or 4 texts from friends and coaches and like, oh my God, you see what happened with Keontae Johnson? I'm like, oh boy. And then they all just kind of explain what happened, and you read about it. It's like, man, that's a tough year already. That's tough news to hear. So hopefully he can get back to health here soon.
Yeah, hopefully so. That will, I guess that'll round out things for us. And, I'm going to an event this week, so I'll have plenty to say. I'm going to IMG Academy. They're hosting a prep showcase there with, Sunrise Christian, Kansas, a bunch of other schools down there, Hargrave. I don't know who else, but there's a bunch of them. So we'll have that to discuss when I get back. And you are also covering something this weekend, correct?
Yeah, so I'm always at games throughout the week, but this Friday and Saturday at Milton High School, I think Milton plays Lake Norman Christian with Mikey Williams. So you get Mikey Williams versus Bruce Thornton and Kanan Carlisle, which would be fun backcourt matchups. And then the other game is Sandy Creek with Jabari Smith. They'll be playing against Germantown out of Tennessee, which is where Mason Miller, Mike Miller's son, plays. So I know we talked a little bit about Creighton earlier. Mason Miller's going to Creighton. So seeing Jabari and Mason Miller, 2'6'9", big time forwards going at it, that'll be fun to watch too. So I'm really looking forward to getting over there on Friday.
So nice to hear you just casually throw out. I'm always at games throughout the week as if there are no games being played here or anywhere else. So you're lucky.
Yeah, like I'm going to one tonight. Hopefully we'll find one tomorrow. I usually every Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, and if I can pick one off on one of the other nights, that's good too. But no, being in Atlanta is great because there's so many players. I can go find pretty much any gym in the area, and I'll find a Division I player in the gym. So it's awesome living here.
No, that's great for sure. All right, well, we'll get together again next week, Dan. Man, I appreciate you, and have a good week.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
All right.
Go Bills, Bills Mafia.
Yeah, maybe.